Michelle, we're here for part two of our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you just give us a quick intro and tell us a little about yourself?
I am Michelle Greer. I am in product marketing and right now doing consulting. And I have worked in this industry for a while for fun companies like Heroku, HashiCorp, and an Apollo with you.
We had a great conversation last time talking about a variety of things having to do with developer marketing. And I'd like to zoom into one area of the market that I know this audience is really interested in. You've worked with marketing. Obviously, you acknowledge we were colleagues at Apollo. You've worked with marketing GraphQL in that capacity. And the GraphQL language, even since it was first open source, hasn't really changed much, but the market around it certainly has. So what are some opportunities and risks that you see for the GraphQL community today?
Uh, Obviously, the big opportunity is AI. There's a lot of thoughts on GraphQL for AI. I saw something that you said, and I've been kind of far removed from it. I know, there was who's the guy from Netflix?
Marc-Andre?
Yes.
Marc-Andre Giroux? Mhm.
So there's lots of thoughts. I think the biggest opportunity is the GraphQL needs to converge and say, what does GraphQL look like in this era of AI, right? And I've always been a fan of the idea that like GraphQL is a broader community, right? I think it's important to recognize that you have to swim with the times, right? You gotta move. So that's the big opportunity. I think the big risk is just fragmentation, and that's for any community. I mean, I think it's really hard when there's just very different visions for a product, and the community is just like, "Can you just make this useful so I can put this in my app?" Right? So I don't think anything really changes. Obviously, GraphQL as a concept for AI agents is incredibly compelling, as is a supergraph, right?
Mhm.
Because defining objects and having semantic context, I think you'd have to be foolish not to understand that um, as uh, as somebody who sees what agents do. I think one of the risks is MCP seems to have, yeah, obviously MCP has a lot of traction. It's a standard at this
Yeah.
point, but it's still in the scope of everything fairly new. So I think there are risks of, how do these things play together? And what is GraphQL's role in when you're building an agent? I think one of the things that when I was at Apollo, we kind of struggled, at least I struggled with, is so many of the agents, so much of how people were using GraphQL was around consumer apps, right? Like I'm booking a flight, I'm, reading the newspaper. And so many of the agents were built around internal use cases. So that was definitely a deviation. And I still think there is a lot of that deviation today, right? Like people aren't really building agents like, hey, book a flight on Expedia. It's not really as serious as it is like, hey, I'm going to make it easy to pull data, right? Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it easy to write, like an essay or whatever. That's an internal use case. That's not a consumer app. So I think that's the big risk to GraphQL today is that, right now the juice, like what people are focusing on is more that internal use case. So I'm not sure. I've been far away enough removes that I'm not sure how GraphQL is being used for those internal use cases, but that's definitely a use case that, might make GraphQL less important than people see stuff like MCP.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think everybody who's operating in sort of a direct-to-consumer business right now is asking themselves, like, what is the right agentic experience? Is it in my product? Is it something I'm rolling out in like the Chat GPT interface or something like that, using the MCP apps spec or something like that? What is the magic distribution channel, or is it like a combination of things? And what gives it that voice? And that certainly GraphQL fits in there, but it's also a question of like what's the quality bar for agents, and I think everybody's grappling with that. So I think
Still,
that's a really good observation.
what gets me about AI agents is we're still kind of grappling with what they're supposed to do and how you build
Mhm.
them. And like, if you think about it, we were talking about this before the call, like by this point, we'd figured out mobile. You know, there was like the HTML5 kind of flirtation. And then they were like, okay,
Mm.
like, there's going to be, we're going to use this for Android. We're going to use this for, Swift for iOS and then React. Like, but at this point, there's less standardization in how things are built. And it's crazy because AI has been around for a long time relative to some other tools. And so I think everybody's kind of, I think a lot of developer tools and workflows are vulnerable because it is still, um, it's not standardized in any way, shape, or form from what I've seen.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And so I'm kind of curious to see where, um, what role institutions like the Agentic AI Foundation might play in this ecosystem. Are they going to, are we speaking specifically around just the technical standards or things like that, or are they going to take up more space when it comes to kind of defining some of the more broader usage questions and ecosystem wide implications of this? Seems like a lot to take on either way. So it's just a matter of what strategy you want to actually pursue.
And I think the big factor that comes into play with AI, a lot of developers don't like talking about this part, is money. It's
Mm,
nuts how much this stuff costs, right? So like, you're doing mobile, you're doing social. I guess big data definitely came with like real costs.
sure.
But like, when you've got Uber and they're plowing through their AI budget in like 3 months, their annual budget, like it's hard to know what standardization looks like when the financials are not quite, they're as the opposite of predictable.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
like
bringing that
develop,
around,
huh?
yeah, bringing that around to like GraphQL though, that's where I see the big opportunity space because I think if you look at the way that a lot of folks use AI right now, it can be very token inefficient.
That's
And where
crazy.
I think, I have this talk track that I go to of like, your token should be spent on reasoning, not on orchestration. And I
Yeah.
think that, if you have that graph full of all the, where all your business objects are kind of interrelated and
Yeah.
the router is orchestrating all of that, then all your agent needs to do is find the right query. It doesn't need to think about, okay, I have this information. Now I need to select these fields from this giant pile of tokens and then go back to the service layer. I need to figure out where that stuff is. Instead, it's a much simpler and more efficient um, uh, paradigm to follow. And so I'm curious to see if that becomes, I would love for that to be sort of what front and center on people's minds when they think about GraphQL in 2026 and beyond.
Yeah. I mean, the semantic context made things more efficient even before AI. Like
Sure.
AI doesn't really change that. I think there's definitely a trend and it's starting, but I don't know if it's as big as I think it should be. But like I was talking with a startup founder and he was like, "Oh yeah, our investor, who's one of the big ones, was like, we should be monitoring token usage for our employees." Like they actually literally encourage that. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, hey, we want you to be spending more money. Like, so there's some pushback on that idea, like from like FinOps teams, they're starting to kind of rein that in. But I don't think it's as strong a movement as it needs to be because that's just waste. It's like taking cash and just be like, hey, let's just burn this, right? So I think if things kind of, we have bear markets and we have bull markets. If things kind of start going towards that bull market, I think people are going to start rethinking their architectures to be more efficient. And that's where
Mm,
GraphQL could come into play because you've got, with more semantic context, you've got just less round trips and less API calls.
100%. Now speaking of I see AI being used now all the time. Talking shop about marketing now for things like copy, text, and images. What are some do's and don'ts from your point of view on using generative AI at different points in the sales funnel when you're trying to reach people?
Oh, I have used I mean, I use Claude. I find the output pretty good. Um, there are some days where I'm like, oh, Claude, you just have to take a break because you're like, this is just, and I've just embraced it. Um, I tend to use it a lot more to think. And sometimes I just write because I write really quickly. I don't really struggle with that. I think if you're using AI for copy and for images, the key thing is giving I use, with Claude, you can give it um, context up front, right? So I typically start with canonical messaging, right? This is how we talk about the company. I'll do that like if I'm doing a blog post or a feature release. This is how, like the same way you would do an FAQ for the field, you're giving that FAQ to the LLM so that it's not pulling something out of its blank because that's what it's going to do. Like the hardest tendency with an LLM is that it just wants to please you and it wants to give you an answer. And if it doesn't have that context, it's going to give you crap.
Mm,
And so the more context you feed it, the more valuable the output. And that's the same for images. I think design has always been the bane of my existence, which is frustrating because I think LLMs are better at text than they are at images. It's still like evolving, but like giving it, okay, here's our brand guidelines. All right. The more context you can give it, like even just like, I want you to use this image or like do it in this image style. If you can feed that context up front, the outputs are going to be a lot less frustrating.
mm.
One thing I had to learn firsthand, and this is where it gets into the weeds, do not have LLMs generate any image with text. So create the image, right? And then whatever text you have to put on there, you have to put on there because you will be sitting there going, why is, and like sometimes, especially like things like Canva will just scramble out something that looks like it's from Tron, but that's the easiest way to get a good output. But yeah, and then sometimes if you got to take a break because the output is bad, take a break and relax because sometimes LLMs, somebody came up with the analogy, it's the same way with code. Like, um, it's like putting $1 in a Coke machine and like, the first 3 tries are going to be frustrating. And then finally you're going to get your Coke. And then eventually it gets down to 2 tries and then maybe 1 try.
It is interesting how it's like, yeah, that pull of the slot machine um,
Yeah.
analogy, it resonates.
I think what's happening now too that is bad for a company. I think the more vision you have, the more consistent things are because what happens is like PMM can generate things so quickly, but so can like BDRs who are
Hmm.
just spamming people. And so they're like, if you can't get them what they need quickly, sometimes they'll use LLMs and you're like, that copy is awful.
Interesting. So like get timing is everything.
Well, timing is important, but just having managers and executives who recognize ownership is also important, right? Like
Hmm.
I might want a feature, in the front end, but and I theoretically could, submit a pull request and try and ship it, right? Like I'm just gonna build this, but sometimes ownership is actually good because the person who actually owns the front end is gonna do a better job than I would. So that happens with copy too, and images.
Show us something on your desk or within arm's reach. We're not keeping score right now and talk about it.
I was gonna have a picture of my kid, but then I was like, I'm kind of weird about a picture of her. This is a drawing. So I have all these like art, but like the other wall is my kid's art because like it's awesome and it makes me happy. So she's now drawing. She was like really little and we worked together. She loves
Oh my
cheetahs.
God. Oh, that's great.
Cheetah, right? She did all the spots because she's very patient. And this is her, and like her mouth is like open. She's like, ah. And apparently this is me. I'm apparently the same size as that she is, and I'm scared, and Daddy's scared too. And so,
Sure,
but
giant cheetah. I mean, they're
I
already fast.
I love her drawings because uh She uses expressions. She's only 5. She just turned 5, but like she's like she does very expressive people. And so yeah, I'm building a wall behind me.
That is super cool. Timely content for me too, because it is Safari Day at camp for my daughter, and she was upset because her cheetah print shorts were in the laundry and she couldn't use those. So,
What the heck they
life's
do?
full of disappointments. I know.
Something I learned, you sometimes you think it's cheetah print, but cheetahs actually have spots. A lot of the things people think is cheetah print is actually leopard print.
Oh, I'll have to look that up. I'll have to type that into
Leopard,
Claude later and get a
cheetah
print
versus leopard
cheetah
print.
v leopard. Maybe I'll do a video on it. That would be cool.
My daughter would be like, he's right on, he's spot on.
All right. That is so cool. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today. There's just, so much insight that you have to offer here, and really appreciate you sharing your mind with us, and all the best.
Thank you. It's been fun and it's awesome seeing you again.
You too. Catch you later.
Ciao.